He kept a talented illustrator on staff, but his lease described him as catalaio legatore, stationer and bookbinder, and he specialized not in obscure and enticing Greek and Latin works, but rather in the humbler trade of binding manuscripts. Besides paper and parchment, the shop was therefore well supplied with clasps, studs, wooden boards, hammers and nails, as well as piles of calfskin and velvets. The barking of hammers, the coughing of swords, such were the sounds greeting anyone who entered his shop. Things were about to change. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Ramya Amuddin, and our technical producer for today, as Nazreen Abdelmajid is not with us, is Matt Agnew, so welcoming him to the scene as well. The quote that we just heard, our weekly quote, we're really enjoying these, is from The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King. This is a literature biography, and there's a lot to get into with this book. I'll pause it there for now because we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the rest of the show. But it is quite an interesting read or listen, I think, from the previews that I've gotten. So that quote is actually from the bit of sample that you could get when listening to Audible, again, The Bookseller of Florence. Let's just jump right into the first part of our segment today and the show, which is a glance at the CELA homepage, the Center for Equitable Library Access. And we're going to start with the three featured titles at the very top of the page. This is the first heading if you're navigating using a screen reader. So for our three featured books, we have The Bookseller of Florence. Wow, what are the chances? By Ross King. This is a biography / literature. We also have Dad Up by Steve Patterson, which is a humor novel. And this one was hilarious to talk about. We talked about it last week with Julia Bennett, our guest on this show. So great. Just hearing her as a parent talking about how Dad Up could be an interesting listen for her. That was written and narrated by Steve Patterson himself. So if you want to check that out, go to your favorite podcast platform and search up AMI Audiobook Review. The Meaning of Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey, an memoir and an autobiography narrated and written by Mariah herself, is the third book in the featured titles realm. And that one was also a fun talk. If you think about it, we've talked about 2 out of 3 of these books already. In our pilot episode, we talked about Mariah Carey, and there were some really rave reviews and notable reviews written on not just the written book, but the audiobook, and hearing from Mariah as a narrator, right? So not just the lyrical side of her when it comes to music and songwriting, but really just what that meant for people, the leveling up of listening to Mariah narrate her own story. There was a lot of homage to her hair and the characteristics and just her as a character behind some of the stuff that she writes. Excellent sounding novel / memoir. So I'm curious about what people think on that as well. So again, these are the 3 books you can find under the featured section. That's the first heading in the CELA homepage. We also want to highlight, as we usually do, some of the announcements on CELA. Last week we talked about the election guides that are out there on CELA, which you can still find, celalibrary.ca, CELA library.ca. But the announcement that they have on the homepage today, as the elections are coming up, this is quite different. So using CELA and finding information and help for first-time users and newcomers. So they have specific guides up there, and there are links to each of these guides. The first one being for educators. Other professionals is the second one. Designates. What is a print disability? And new welcome to CELA / CELA video. So these are the content available for you on the homepage that you can find under the announcements heading. Let's talk about what's trending on a few different places. We'll start with Twitter, as it's very easy to search up what's trending on Twitter. So much audiobook news, always, like every minute, every hour of the day, something is always trending with hashtag audiobooks. Or if you have a particular platform that you want to follow, like audible.com or Audible UK or Audible Australia, there's a ton of Audible presence. There's also audiobooks.com, and then other incredible platforms and people just sharing love of audiobooks on Twitter. So we'll start with a few Audible Twitters tweets. We'll start with some tweets by Audible. This one was the latest one that I found, September 16th. Happy birthday to the undisputed queen of detective fiction, Agatha Christie, who's often recognized as the best-selling fiction writer of all time. And this is Inside Audible. Oh, sorry. No, that was not Inside Audible. That was a tweet directly from Audible. So happy birthday to Agatha Christie. Really awesome. Now, this is one from Inside Audible from September 15th. It's hashtag Hispanic Heritage Month, and it kicks off today. We're ready to celebrate Latino and Hispanic culture through events hosted by Unitos at Audible. So this is where you can learn more about their employee-led impact groups and other similar initiatives and projects that Audible is taking on. Again, if you want to search more, just go for hashtag Hispanic Heritage Month. One more tweet from Audible, also from September 15th. 7 days never felt so long, from the endless to Barbie catch up to all the characters in the series while you wait for the release of The Sandman. This is Act 2 of The Sandman on September 22nd. So just a few sleeps until that. And this is an essential guide to characters of the Sandman universe. So if you're a fan, that's something that you can look forward to. I'll highlight some new releases from audible.com. The first one is A Slow Fire Burning. This is a novel by Paul Hawkins. The second one, Red X by David Demchuk, and Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket. I loved the Lemony Snicket series, Unfortunate Events novels. That series was so fun. And actually, I think I read it as a kid. I'm not going to lie, I don't remember, but I reread it as a late teenager, and it was mind blowing. It was really, really good still. The writing style, the way that some characters are portrayed, and you know that it's a silliness, but also some seriousness in there. So if you're not yet a fan of Lemony Snicket, I still recommend as an adult you should go check him out. Um, Also, these are not the only new releases on Audible. If you want the whole list, go ahead and check it out. I simply Google new releases audible.com, and you should be able to get that right away. We got lots more coming up on AMI Audiobook Review, and after this quick break, we're going to check in with avid audiobook listener Kamini Rodhan in Toronto. Really good friend of mine, does a lot of audiobook listening, and she's going to kind of remind us about the days before digital listenings as her experience. We'll be right back. AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. Welcome back to AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm Ramya Amuddin, and we're having some really incredible conversations about audiobooks on this show of late. You can search for past episodes. We're only on episode 3, but there's been some real neat conversations in the last 2 episodes as well. Search for us on your favorite podcast platform simply by searching AMI Audiobook Review. So we glanced over a few books from the Sela homepage under the featured book section initially, and now I want to do this fun thing that I'm calling pause or play. I'm pretty sure it's out there already. I'm not going to take credit for it, but we're going to press pause or play, or at least make the decision on that on one of those listens that we talked about earlier. So this is the synopsis of The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King. the best selling author of Brunel's Cheese Dome and Michelangelo and the Pope's Ceiling. And this captures the spirit of the Renaissance in its chronicle of the life and work of the king of the world booksellers and the technological disruption that forever changed the way that knowledge is spread. The Renaissance in Florence conjures images of beautiful frescoes and elegant buildings, the dazzling handiwork of the city's skilled artists and architects. But equally important for the centuries to follow were genius of a different sort. Florence's manuscript hunters, scribes, scholars, and booksellers who blew the dust off of 1,000 years of history and through the discovery and diffusion of ancient knowledge, imagined a new and enlightened world. At the heart of this activity was a remarkable man. Born in 1422, he became what a friend called the king of the world's booksellers. At a time when all books were made by hand, over 4 decades, Vespasiano produced and sold many hundreds of volumes from his bookshop, which also became a gathering spot for discussion and debate. Besides repositories of ancient wisdom by the likes of Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero, his books were works of art in their own right, copied by talented scribes and illuminated by the finest miniatures. His clients included the roll call of popes, kings, and princes across Europe who wished to burnish their reputations by founding magnificent libraries. Vespasiano reached the summit of his powers as Europe's most prolific merchant. So, pause or play. For myself, I think I'm more interested in the summary of the events than the actual books. Now, that being said, I don't think, read any of Ross King's books already. So that's where I stand right now. There's not a lot of impression, because I've read this, I'm interested in reading this. This would be a really heavy read for me, despite the amount of, actual imagery and things conjured up, the descriptions, the beauty being expressed, and all the other things. Historic sounds amazing, but I don't know if I'd be able to go through the whole book. I'm going to ask our guest for today the same question. We're going to be talking to Kamini Rodhan in Toronto, a great friend of mine. She's also quite involved in the blind and low vision community here in Toronto, with the Toronto Visionaries and other projects that she's involved in. So let's check in with her. She's an avid audiobook listener. Kamini, welcome to AMI Audiobook Review.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excited to talk to you. And before we get to what books you're reading and the kind of things you're doing, The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King, from what you have, and I don't know if you have more impression than what I gave you right now, would you press pause or play on this book?
I am gonna agree with you. I usually will read the summary, and if I think it might be interested, I'll play it and then, yeah, pause it. I don't like to go into too much. I like factual things, but I don't like to go into too much details. Like you said, I would rather just read it in a summary or have it told like a story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of cool because you can probably get different novels or books, fiction or nonfiction, to talk about this era, right? Where they describe the way that access for books have changed, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in this very historical nonfiction fashion.
Exactly. I like stories that involve more characters and, less description of this place or this ocean and what's happening in it.
Hmm.
I would rather have
Okay.
real characters tied into a story.
Yeah, and I wonder, is it because of the lasting impression potentially that characters are more relatable than the bigger descriptions of things? But I know for a fact that you've read a lot of these classics and old literature that has a lot of description. So we're getting into that. But before we get digging deep into the audiobook conversation, can you tell us a little about yourself and what you do?
Oh boy. I'm not that interesting, but I'll try.
Yeah, right.
um I guess the only thing I can really talk about is the volunteer work I've done in the past decade or so, I guess. I really like helping people. So I just kind of find ways and things to do. I've been working with the CCB Toronto Visionaries for the past about 5 years or so. I've been doing many different things with them. And the latest thing that I started in the new year of this year is the Let's Talk group running virtually. So I run that every Thursday evenings. And it works out really well. It's a social group, but it's more of a focused social group. So what I do, I have a topic every week and I just ask people questions and let it let the conversation flow, because I believe that the reason why I started the group, I believe that us in the blind community, we have a lot more to offer than we think, and we know a lot more than we think. And I like the idea of just sitting together and sharing stories and hearing different opinions, and I feel like you learn a lot from that.
Yep. And the group's been going really well because the topics that you pick, the few that I've come out to, are really riveting. They call for conversation and sometimes a little debate, but really just perspectives,
Oh
which I
yeah,
think is,
yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. And to run something like that and have the attendance is wonderful. So it's you are very interesting because you read a lot, and you and I have had lots of interesting conversations about books and recommendations and some things that
Mhm.
I've read that I go, I know you'd love this. And then you read it and you're like, I do love it. And you would love this. So, how long have you been listening to audiobooks? Did you listen before it was available at the click of a button?
Yeah, I think when I was in school, I guess this is going back over a decade ago, I didn't listen to audiobooks much. When I did, it was mostly from cassettes, old-fashioned cassettes. I think I would get them from the Toronto Public Library or maybe some from CNIB and just play a cassette and listen to those. But those were mostly books that I was studying in school and I wanted to listen to the audio version. I would read it in print and also listen to the audio version.
And now you didn't own the I say old fashioned as well, but shame on me.
Mhm.
Is the Daisy players with the physical buttons and being able to put in an actual Daisy disc in it? You never had those, right?
I never had those. No, I just had the ones where you put in a cassette and you push the buttons.
Right, okay.
So
Yeah, because
really, really old fashioned. I think that goes even more backwards than the Daisy
yeah,
player.
yeah, I think it
This
does.
is a
I mean,
while ago, probably over 15 years ago.
the fact that they were available at the Toronto Public Library means that, it wasn't too long back when they were still calling it talking
Yeah.
books, but still, yeah, pretty far back. And you connect with a lot of people who enjoy audiobook listening. It's not just you and I having conversations. Are you part of any, community groups, or do you have a lot of friends who you can talk books with?
So that's very interesting. I'm part of a community book club that's run by a member in our community. And I find that interesting. One of the reasons why I joined that was to kind of read different books and explore more, because I vary when I like a specific type of book or even things in general, I tend to stick to that. So the book club gave me an opportunity to read different types of books. So that's going well. And yeah, I don't know too many people that I can talk to about books, because I guess I don't know who reads a lot and who doesn't. Because sometimes I will go through like 5, 6 books in a month.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do like to explore different things, especially now I'm trying to explore different genres of books and read more. And recommendations, yeah, if anybody recommends a book to me, that's good. But I like to do my own research. So if someone recommends a book to me, I will go and research that book and see if it's something I'm interested in. If it is, I'll read it.
So tell us more about that part of it. Researching on the recommendation. Does it mean you just go listen to the sample, or do you really dig deep into whether or not you'd like the book?
I really just If I know a few people that have read it, I'll ask them, and then I'll go and read the summary. I'll go and read the
Hmm.
summary, and then I will decide whether I want to read this book or not.
Wow. That's interesting, right? Because
I don't tend to listen to too many. I don't tend to listen to too many audio samples. I don't know why. I prefer just to read the summary.
okay, that's interesting. So the narrator doesn't always make that big of an impact for you.
In terms of the person who is actually reading the audiobook,
Yes. Well,
yes, it
when
does.
you're okay, but in the
Definitely
initial
does.
conversation.
No, I definitely don't like synthetic. I always prefer human narrators. And there is a couple or maybe one in specific that I really like. But if I start reading a book in audio and I really, really don't like the narrator, I can't read the book.
Hmm.
So the narrator does definitely make a difference for me. I've
Yeah,
had
and
that
that
happen. I read a series with over 30 books, and there was one book in there where I absolutely did not like the narrator, and I didn't read the book. But I read
that
the other 30 books.
that inconsistency though makes me pull my hair out. I remember a few series like that where you're at book 7, you're just absolutely engulfed in it, and then the one book
Hmm.
is either not available in audio or you have to do an ebook
Yep,
version of it, or the narrator is completely different, and I'm just like, forget it, I'm tossing the whole series. But you'll continue it.
I can't. Yeah. I'll continue it. Yeah. As long as I get
That's
a reader I like.
That's dedication. That's dedication. So, okay, so speaking of things you like to read, any particular books from the past or favorite book, or like on the spot, can you think of anything that you just absolutely love?
A book that I read recently that I just thought was really, really interesting, and I had it on my list for months, and I said I have to read this. It's called "Girls Burn Brighter" by Shobha Rao. It's a book about two girls from a part of South India, and it follows their lives and their struggles, and they end up getting separated, and they both end up in New York. I think it was, I can't remember what city right now, but one of them ended up there first, and then the other one figured out that the other was there, and she figured out a way to get there. And she got there and she searched and searched and searched, and way at the end of the book, they met and it ended. So sometimes I'm not very impressed with the way books end, but I can understand why they end the way they do.
Now, are
Because the
you
point was they really needed to meet. So they did. And that was it.
sure? Sure. And the thing is, as you're listening to this book, are you predicting, are you investigating on how they might meet or what might end up happening? Or in the back of your mind, okay, yes, of course they're gonna meet. We just gotta sit along for the ride.
I am I'm always wondering what's going to happen next, and that's the thing with this book. There was a lot of surprises in there. It wasn't very predictable, which was even better, because when I'm reading a book I'm always predicting this is going to happen next, or I think this is going to happen next, and a lot of times it does. But in this book, there was a lot of surprises for me.
Hmm. Every book I read is a surprise. I don't know what it is. I have such vague
Yeah.
thoughts about watching a TV show or listening to an audiobook. It's the same thing for me. I always get surprised at every tiny thing that happens, and then as if I'm discussing it with somebody, they go, really, that surprised you? I thought that was going to happen like 4 chapters ago. And I never go that far into it. It's a very like real time experience for me. I never pause and think, okay, wonder what's going to happen now and now and now. But you also talked about characters and how you love when characters pull you in. So the characters in this novel, did they do that for you?
Yes, I think that's a big thing for me when I start reading a book. If at the beginning the character or characters don't sound interesting to me, I might not like the book so much. It's really the characters that draw me in and how interesting they are.
That's awesome. Well, give us the name of the book one more time.
It's called Girls Burn Brighter.
Okay, amazing. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you, Kamini. We have a lot of conversations offline about books, but you also recommended a book for us on the Ask a Friend segment on our pilot episode, which was also an interesting discussion. So thank you so much for joining us today, for always being a part of our book conversations. And I'm hoping we can get you on again soon.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Kamini Rodhan joining us from Toronto, and she's a good friend of mine, avid audiobook listener, and a member of the community. Lots to talk about there, and so much more to talk about on AMI Audiobook Review. Lots of great conversations. On next week's show, we're going to meet Amir Khan, and he's a new monthly contributor joining us on the show with incredible recommendations, so many hot takes on books that he's read or thinking about reading or people have recommended. Just one of the great book readers and book conversationalists in my life. So I'm very excited that he's going to be joining us monthly on AMI Audiobook Review. Until then, have a great week. Thanks again to Matt Agnew for being our technical producer for the week. I'm Ramya Amudan.